Have you ever wondered why your mind moves on but your heart still hurts? Why you attract the same kind of pain even when you promise yourself never again? In this episode of Magnetic Women Monday, we are decoding the truth about patterns, pain, and power with Vanessa Iceton, registered psychologist and a founder of Pearl Psychological. This isn't just about psychology, it's about understanding yourself because the moment you do, everything changes. Vanessa, welcome to Magnetic Women Monday, and I'm so happy and cannot say how grateful I am that you are here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, today we will be talking a lot about different things and touch upon fear, grief, relationships, and finding our own truth. But before that, I would like to know about you first. So, you worked with a lot of people in their hardest moment in their lives. And I'm so curious about your story. Can you share a time when you had to face any fear or any kind of vulnerability that actually tested you?
Thank you so much for asking this. And I think it's so important to be able to address my fears, my insecurities, my own stuff, kind of before helping people, or throughout the process of, kind of going through my journey of becoming a registered psychologist. It was the EPPP, which is the examination for professional practice of psychology. It was about 6 years journey for me where I really failed the licensing exam 11 times and finally passed on my 12th and kind of third final time because they had changed in 2023 the stipulation. So you could only take the EPPP licensing exam 3 times. So that had changed for me throughout my journey as I was going through that. And what I really recognized throughout that was that in my childhood, that belief, that core belief that we call it, was I am a failure. That was ingrained in me since a really young age. And it was just something that I really struggled with. And it didn't really come to be part of my identity until I really recognized it throughout the EPPP that I was self-sabotaging the exam to a certain extent and myself in the process of continuously failing, whether that would be not studying, not resting enough, going out and partying or going out and doing certain things that were really hindering my process of fulfilling my dream of becoming a registered psychologist. And it wasn't until I really admitted to myself that this is what you're doing, this is what's happening, and this is what's hindering you instead of helping you. And it wasn't really until I took responsibility to acknowledge where I was at and recognize that it was myself and not external factors, that it was more coming from the internal, where I really had to work on that for myself.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. But then what motivated you to take this career? Just going into psychologist and not choosing something else because being a psychologist means like working with people like very closely, understanding them. So do you think you had some kind of that quality from within you to help people out or something like that within you that motivated you to take this career?
Yeah, this was my dream ever since I was about 11 to 14. I kind of knew that this is what I wanted to do. This is where I'm supposed to be. It was always told that, hey, Vanessa, you give really good advice, or you're really honest with people, you're really upfront, you have a really great way of advocating or going about it. And it was something that I thoroughly in kind of enjoyed doing, but it became my dream. It became my passion. It became part of my identity. And that's what kept me motivated to keep going. It was my determination, my resilience that I needed throughout the process. Perseverance really helped me. I was really determined to fulfill this passion and this dream and make it come true. Part of that, though, I do have to be honest, and again, just being vulnerable in that was a sense of needing to prove. I needed to prove to people that I could do it. And it became, again, part of that external factor. And it was that internal motivator that also was a piece of the external that I needed to prove to others that I was worthy enough to be in this position where I'm at today.
Right. Wow. Okay. So you begin your career with youth care worker, and now you lead your own practice. It's Pearl
Mm.
Psychological.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so this is such an inspiring journey. So, along the way, what belief about people has guided you and still shapes the way you work with them?
The belief that I can have success, that I can be successful. And I guess that would be the opposite of my negative core belief of I am a failure, is that just I am capable. There was points in my life where whatever came up to success, or which would be maybe I am capable or I am worthy, I am enough, I am smart enough, I can do this. I really had to change the narrative of my story, that it wasn't, you're failing, that you're a failure, you can't do this, you'll never measure up, or you're never live up to people's expectations. And there was a lot of barriers along the way that kind of reinforced my failing. However, as I kind of was inspired by seeing other people's stories, and, the fact that I worked with child and youth care, and then I worked in other industries where I was on the flip side of helping people. It became kind of enlightening to me that I was like, you know what? I need to do this from a different perspective. And so that kind of flipped my rationale to you are smart enough. You can do this. If other people can get out of their deepest, darkest stuff, you can also do it. And also learning not to compare. I really had to learn not to compare my story to other people's stories, because a ton of people had already advanced into other, life circumstances. They either got, their dream job, or they got married, they had a family, and, I was still way back here working on my stuff. And I was like, my story is different. I'm unique. I'm taking my own path, and this is the path that either I was destined to take, or that I just chose to take, and I have to live with the consequences, both positive and negative, of those choices.
Wow, that's very powerful. So, I would like to know a little bit about your professional side now. When should I think that this is the right time that I should approach a psychologist?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for everyone it might be different. However, there is this general component of maybe not feeling where you want to be in life, or you're questioning maybe your judgment in certain circumstances, or you're maybe feeling the word stuck. I think that's a very generalized word, but a lot of people feel that maybe you're at a crossroads in your life. Maybe you're at that point where it's like, do I stay in this marriage, or do I get divorced? Do I stay in this career path, or do I not? A lot of sometimes we can figure things out on our own, or we have the capacity or the ability, but sometimes that third party can be really helpful. And when it's coming from a very non-judgmental approach, and more of the compassionate, empathetic side, it's a
Yeah.
little bit easier to have more insight or more aha moments. So sometimes when you're really questioning yourself, I would say that's the best thing to do. There's also the component of maybe feeling in your life that, you might want something more, you want something different, or something's missing, or there's a loss. That might be a good time to see a therapist, or a psychologist. It just depends on kind of um, where you feel in your life something's missing, is how I would kind of describe that, so to speak. And maybe the friends that you go talk to are just like, oh, you'll get over it, you'll get through it.
Mhm.
You might feel really invalidated in life, and you're gonna, when seeking a therapist, you're gonna be validated. Your experience is gonna be acknowledged, and your narrative and your story is gonna become your truth. And that person is gonna help kind of guide you. They don't have to give you their opinion or their advice. In the regards of, but it's more just to be that sounding board. And sometimes people can come in and completely talk their way through their own problems. They just needed to be heard and needed to be listened to.
Right. That's going to be actually helpful for our audience to understand as well that on a daily basis, whatever we are feeling, when we are trying to ignore it, it's actually ignoring our own feelings, because I think it actually start to build up, you ignore yourself one day, 1 week, 1 year, and then you see that your self-esteem is completely gone.
Yeah, we do have to validate ourselves like internally. It does come back to that internal focus of like, you know what you need, right? We all secretly know what we need. It's just about acknowledging it. It's about validating it, and sometimes that can be seen as selfish. I know that that comes up as like, oh, because you're just focused on you, you're selfish, and that's actually super incorrect. And it's unfortunate that that's how our society has portrayed people who need help. Or when they decide to take that opportunity to be like, you know what, I just got to focus on me right now because that's all I have capacity for.
Yes.
It's seen as the misconception of being selfish. And so having that support and acknowledging, hey, I'm not who I used to be, or my identity has changed, or, my kids are all growing up now. I used to be a mom and now I don't know who I am, or I used to be this career person and now I just retired. And those
Right.
types of people, like there's a big loss there. And that support is needed to be able to kind of restructure and validate where you're at right now and really acknowledge, hey, I'm looking for something different, better, or more. And this is where I'm at.
hmm Yeah, true, very true. So
Mhm.
let us talk a little bit about trauma now. So many people carry it without even realizing it. And the effect it has on the mind and the body is we can't even imagine. So can you
Mhm.
explain in just a simple terms what happened in the brain when someone experienced trauma?
Mhm. Yeah, it's an interesting component because trauma can be viewed as like anything. And some people are like, oh, I don't have trauma. Sometimes they're like, yes, I do have trauma. I think trauma is also hard to define in some circumstances. I'm not going to define it for you. I'll kind of let people define it kind of in their own terms, just because I view maybe trauma a little bit differently. However, in the brain, trauma or the thing that has happened to you becomes stuck. So I kind of explained it as like your brain and the neural pathways in your brain fire in kind of that one direction. So when the trauma happens, that neural pathway gets stuck, right? So it's just constantly shooting and the neurons are constantly shooting in that one way. And so and what happens, it becomes locked. And then you're unable to actually have the neurons fire in a different way. Whereas before, when we're coping and we're regulating and we're doing mindfulness stuff and we're exercising and doing all the things, that trauma usually, our neurons are able to fire in different ways. But when that trauma gets stuck, we become, in our body, the trauma also gets stuck. So that can get stuck maybe in our throat, in our head, in our shoulders, in our chest, stomach, gut. So there's different places in our body where it does get stuck. So the neural pathways are now going in one direction, and then the trauma is also getting stuck in our body somatically. So in that, we become dysregulated, right? So we're unable to, if we're not coping and if we're not doing something with the thing that has happened to us,
Mhm.
we're probably most likely going to feel the stuff in our body, and our brain is going to be wired now differently. So people are always like, oh, I wish I was who I once was. It's like, well, the neural pathway has actually changed. So you're not going to be who you once were. That has changed you. And so now we are working on coping with it. We're working on regulating. We have to actually reprocess through the thing that has happened to you. So that's why um, trauma therapies such as like EMDR or ART, accelerated resolution therapy, and EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, can actually help to unwire and reprocess the neural pathways in the brain, and for us to be able to have the capacity to think something different and to have those neural pathways now be different in the brain, and for the body to actually be vulnerable, let go of the stuff, unlock it, and reprocess it in that time period.
Oh, wow. And how much time does it take? I know it's depend upon what kind of trauma it is, But then again, if we are working very closely with the psychologist, if there is one trauma that is within us, and how long does it take? Because usually what I have read in the books that it takes 21 days or like 45 days to, completely change your and rewire your brain. So do you
Mhm.
think that the trauma can, if we work with the psychologist, it will work on the same concept, or does it go so deep that it will take at least few years or few months to get us recovered from any kind of situations like this?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's an interesting question because like you said, no trauma is the same. No one also responds to a trauma. So you could have three people in a car accident, have every single person respond to the trauma differently. One
Yes.
person might not be affected by it at
Yeah.
all. One person could be debilitated by it psychologically, and one person might just be like, it was a thing and there's some stuff, but it might not be, but it might be different. So it's interesting based on our history and past how people have learned to cope and regulate in the past. So our childhood is a big predictor and generationally how we actually respond to what has happened to you, whether that's a trauma or something significant. And so there are no specific time frames. I don't like to give people that because it does depend on how often they're coming to treatment, what they're doing outside of the treatment sessions, whether they're working on different things and homework assignments that are being assigned. However, I will describe some statistics behind therapy and how that works. Is so they'll say by session 3, there's a large increase of hope from sessions 8 to 16 is usually like the kind of average that we ask people to kind of commit to, because that's where people actually get 50% better. So from sessions 8 to 16. Anything over session 25 is then about 75% better. And then from there, from session, say 51 and beyond, is actually much smaller increments of where people are about 85% better. So it doesn't really get much better, so to speak, than that beyond session 51. So that's statistics, if you're a numbers person, which can be helpful because then it's like, if you kind of make that commitment to yourself to say, hey, I'm going to attend therapy for 12 to 15 sessions as an example, and you're committing to that, you can guarantee that you'll be at a 50% much better place than what you were, say, 12 weeks ago. And then it depends on the consistency. So I highly recommend that people go weekly for at the least the first 4 to 8 sessions. Obviously, of course, that depends on benefits or financial situations, time commitments, etc. But that's what I suggest so that you can actually get the momentum going. The first couple sessions are kind of like, history and past, and then you kind of get into some of the work as you go through. And sometimes honestly, it takes maybe even 3 to 5 sessions for you to even start trusting your therapist, especially in particular, is that you got to build that rapport. And that's my job, is I have to really make sure that I'm working on you feeling safe and comfortable and vulnerable and trust me as a therapist to help guide you in that process of therapy and in your journey to recovery.
Okay, so you use different approaches to help people recover. Do you have any example that you can share? Anyone that you use it on your client, and how using that we can recover from any trauma or anything that is going on in our mind?
Yeah, I think the main component I always start with, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist kind of as the foundation of my therapy, and then I will kind of pick and choose and guide the client into other types of therapies beyond that. But cognitive behavioral therapy, or for short, CBT, is what I really kind of set the foundation. So when I mentioned core belief, I'm really kind of identifying with the client, what is your trigger? What's the trigger you want to focus on? What's the thing that brought you here? Whether that's the trauma, it could be a parent, a child's partner, friend, work, whatever that trigger is. Then from there, we're working on what the core belief is or what the automatic thought is. So I'll take that automatic thought about the trigger, and then we'll start to kind of dig deep to really like explore the root, which is usually a component of something related to self-worth. So
Mhm.
that might be So like I mentioned, mine is I am a failure. That stems from my dad, so to speak, and just kind of going from there. So then that exasperated in my life into other things. So whereas someone else's might be, I'm worthless, I am not good enough, I am not in control, I am unlovable, I am damaged, or it could be, I am responsible, I am not safe, I cannot protect myself. So those are some examples of some core beliefs that people hold, that they're the roots of why they are the way they are today. Then
Mm-hmm.
what I'll do is I'll really explore the feelings behind that. So how does that core belief make you feel? And we really identify the feelings, which is why I kind of have the feeling wheel pillow here.
Okay.
People love this, and I'll kind of show you a little bit of it. So then you'd be like, okay, what are your feelings? And we really, really dig deep, right? So that's the internal feelings. Then we
Mhm.
identify how that person behaves. So that might be physiologically. So again, what's in your body physiologically or physically. So how are they outwardly behaving? Does this core belief exasperate you to lash out? Are we, shutting down? Are we withdrawing? Are we isolating? So how are you exuding yourself in the world based on this core belief? And then from there, we go to the rational. So we're like, hey, what would you prefer? Hypothetically, if you could think the best thing about yourself, what would that be? So usually it's the opposite. So again, mine's I'm a failure. It would be like I am successful or I can be successful. If it was I'm not good enough, it might be I am good enough or I am enough. Same with worthless, worthy. So, I am not capable, capable. So we're looking at that. And then we're looking at how would that make you feel if you did believe that thing? And how would you behave if you believed that you are worthy or enough or successful, like, as an example? And then once we kind of go through that, we start affirming that. So anything in their life now, we start to try to find affirmations that fulfill the worthiness or the success or being good enough. And we start to validate for that self internally, not externally. So again, we're not finding, people who compliment us. We're finding people, or we're finding yourself inwardly. How am I complimenting myself? And so we start to change that narrative of how they view themselves.
I love the way you explained every detail. And I was thinking about myself that how I usually work it out. Like if something is within me going on and which is bothering me. So a few things I like follow the same way that you explain, but then definitely the few things that you deeply explained, I'm going to start using it at home as well, so that on a daily basis, at least whatever my narratives are going on within me, that can be changed so that I am actually not looking validation from outside. I'm actually saying to me every morning, oh, yes, I'm the best, even though whatever the world around me is saying. So, yeah, thank you for
Exactly.
sharing that.
Yeah,
Um,
you're so welcome. I want to just acknowledge too that that's exactly, people will come up with all different types of affirmations, but we really have to make sure they're personalized to you, and that they're personalized to what you're going through. Because I can
right.
wake up every day and say to myself, you know, I'm amazing, and that might not sit true for me. Whereas it's like I might be a rock star instead of amazing. So just as an example, we want to use things that are really personalized to us. And sometimes I highly recommend any types of like affirmation apps, but I also highly recommend writing them down or journaling out affirmations that actually really fit true to who you are and who you want to be, or who your identity is, so that you can make sure that it's like they're easier to believe than
Mhm.
they are to just know. So I always kind of challenge that thought between, oh, I know this, as opposed to, no, I need to believe this, and I believe this truly and wholeheartedly about myself.
Okay. I want to know a little bit about resilience. It's a
Mhm.
word we often hear from everyone, but what does it really mean in everyday's life? How can
Mhm.
someone see resilience in themselves?
Yeah, resilience is about how you're kind of making it through, how quickly you're kind of recovering from something. And when we have the tools and skills, we can usually recover quickly. when we don't have the tools and skills, though, those things kind of perpetuate, or they might drag on, and we don't recover as quickly, or we don't know how to keep ourselves safe and stuff like that. So what I'm working on with clients is to build up their capacity by being able to cope with what's happening right here, right now. So really in the present moment, what are
Right.
we going through and what are we doing, right? A lot of people, I guess the word self-care comes into play here a lot, is that that word can also be overused. However, it's so important. We actually need to be able to recover. So self-care is actually you becoming more resilient in your life to be able to cope, to care, to regulate yourself, to sustain, your identity and your peace of mind in this world, and to maintain balance, I guess, so to speak, is the word there that I would use. So, my tolerance over the 6 years of my EPP journey as well is that I had to learn how to become resilient on failing every single time I
Right.
failed.
Mhm.
That I eventually, now I'm like, now things hit me and I'm like, so my resilience is pretty solid, but that was learned. It was an effort. It's a very effortful response that we're having to put in to become more resilient. And people think, oh, I don't have resilience. It's like, actually, if we were to acknowledge and validate probably all the times that you've been through stuff and what has happened to you, you'd probably really recognize that
Yeah.
you're resilient. We all have
We
it.
all have it. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's move into the section of grief. It is
Mhm.
something that everyone experiences, even if we do not always recognize it. People often think that grief is only about losing someone, but it can take many forms. And
100%.
yeah, so what are some of the hidden types of grief people carry on a daily basis, everyday life?
Yeah. I kind of explain grief as the natural, normal reaction to loss. And I'm a grief recovery specialist with the Grief Recovery Institute, who have created a book called the Grief Recovery Handbook. And so this is where some of my knowledge is coming in right now with regards to grief.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the end or the change of a familiar pattern of behavior. So, and it's also about the hopes, dreams, and expectations that we had for that thing or that relationship. So, whether that is a career ending, could be a piece of that. Retirement is grief. So, it's the end of change of familiar pattern of behavior that you wake up, you go to work every day, and then the next thing you know, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
You wake up, or you call your mom every day, or you call your dad, and then when they leave or they pass and we don't have that anymore, or a friend loss could be that. Um, Other ones could be, marriage. Just going from singlehood to being married is a grief. Of course, yes, it could be a celebratory thing, but it's also a grief in that process.
Mm-hmm.
Other things could be moving. Even when you move, you're moving from familiar pattern, you're moving from familiar streets and neighbors and things like that. So moving can be a grief. Then we can look at some of the intangible things. So this might be financial loss of even buying a home, or a new vehicle, or going into debt if we've lost our job. And then next thing you know, now we have no money to pay our bills, as an example. Uh, Loss of independence can be one as well. Loss of trust. There's what else could be? There's lots of like forms of losses. So there's 40 different life events that can cause the feelings of grief. Even health issues. So health issues, I was diagnosed with celiac disease about 5 years ago, and that changed my entire being of food and how I view food. So even with socializing, that has changed my entire familiar pattern of eating.
Okay. Now let's move to relationships.
Mhm.
Um, so relationships, they often reflect our own patterns, and
Mhm.
sometimes we repeat the same conflicts over and over again. So why do people repeat these conflicts in a long-term relationship?
Yeah, so even that kind of goes back to some of the cognitive behavioral therapy thought process. So we have a trigger, that's the relationship. Thought is, maybe I'm not good enough, and then that comes from their history and past their childhood. They have feelings about it and a behavioral response. And then that cycles around. And this literally will keep looping around no matter what the trigger is, because the thought, the core belief is always the same. So it's going to be relatable to any circumstance that's in their life. So if they're perpetually repeating that same pattern in their life, it's because that same core belief is popping up. So until they start thinking something different, nothing's going to change. So we call it kind of the irrational thought loop until we stop that thought and then go to a rational
And how
belief
can we
system.
stop this? Is there any method in psychology that we can use or like psychologists use to break that pattern?
It would be about thinking something different, right? So then if that thought is that, you know what, I am enough and what I do is enough. And then people start maybe standing up for themselves. So then eventually the behaviors are going to change, right? So I start standing up for myself. I use my voice. Maybe I set some boundaries. I vocalize what I need. I have different expectations. I find that boundaries are a big piece of relationships and what people expect. So if you have one partner who's expecting one thing and this partner's expecting something else, and we're becoming gridlocked in that issue where there's no compromise, we're going to have to work it out. So we're going to have to look at what are our expectations. But if one person's willing to do that and the other one's not, we're going to have conflict, right? And so this is
Right.
going to exasperate the issues ongoing. So it's a larger issue than being able to probably answer this in a single in a single sentence. But I just kind of want people to understand that probably it's your own core belief that's perpetuating your own cycles, and it's your partner's own core belief that's perpetuating them. And then we're not seeing or understanding the root cause of the actual issue.
Okay. And if like both of them actually wanted to change, they can come
Mhm.
out and reach out to psychologist and their relationship can be back and good again, or like do they have to start to compromise on things? What do you think?
Compromise is always like what is going to eventually have to happen. I'm speaking from a Gottman couples therapy method. That's the method I use, and there's actually an intervention specifically called the art of compromise that I would do specifically with my clients to come to a compromise on what that looks like for them. So how that shifts and changes, and how the dynamic shifts and changes. And hopefully we can work through some of the feelings that each partner is feeling, which is usually going to stem from some sort of a resentment because they haven't been meeting each other's expectations or needs.
Mhm. Okay. So let's talk about your book. Your
Yeah.
book, yeah, Mindset Coward, Lying Our Way to the Truth.
Yes.
Such a striking title. I love it. Like I'm so looking forward to read that book. So that means we all lie to ourselves at some point of time. And we do on a daily basis, here and there. And even we do not realize it, but there are some talk that we just do it. Do you think is it good to talk lie a little bit just to make ourselves fool, or like we should always be truthful to ourselves? What do you think?
Psychologist in me wants to be like, what is your thoughts on this? However, I will answer the question, but yeah, the mindset coward lying our way to the truth is we do lie, right? We do lie to change our narrative. It's about right, it's becoming from a defensive mode, right? We've learned to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves from the external sources that keep coming at us. And so the lies, can they be helpful? Maybe. Can they protect us? Potentially. Are they helpful 100%? And are they gonna, long term be good for us? Not usually. And so it is about really like we do have to take responsibility for our own stuff. We do have to self-reflect and we have to look inward and be like, what did I do to cause the consequence, and if I do continue to lie, can I continue to handle the consequences, which might be positive or might be negative? And the depressed brain is going to want to keep perpetuating the same problem, which is what happened to me in my EPP journey. I kept telling myself that I'm stupid, that I'm not smart enough, that I'm an idiot, that I'm, going to keep failing. And I'd walk into that room and fail. And I perpetuated that own lie to myself. Whereas the courage to stand up and say, hey, I'm failing, I need help, and then get help for the things that I didn't know how to do, is what the book is basically explaining, is that we're not becoming vulnerable to the process. And vulnerability is scary, it's hard, it's painful, but vulnerability is the truth. And in a lie, we're not really vulnerable. And so the authors, I'm with three other authors in this book, and we all share our own life experiences of that being a coward, and then what was the lie and what was the truth. And then the chapters of the book actually spell courage, and then you're going to learn in each of the chapters what was the lie, what was the truth, and then it's going to kind of go through in sequentially what that looks like for each of us, and through our experiences, how we overcame the lie.
Wow, that's going to be very interesting.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just got a copy of the script and I'm starting to read through it, and I'm like, this is so cool. So I'm
Wow.
really proud of it. And like I said earlier, like, this is not something that I ever thought that I would do. I was on a podcast a couple of years ago with this guy, and he, joined me after and saying, hey, you have a story, and this story deserves to be shared. And so there's the four of us collaborating on this book, all sharing our story, which is creating something extremely powerful to help people, and help inspire people to be vulnerable. And vulnerability actually is so helpful when we're able to have the courage and bravery to acknowledge our truths.
Yeah. Okay. So when someone feel completely lost, what is one question they can ask themselves to start finding more clarity about themselves?
Mm. I guess you could start with, like, what is the lie? Or I love Brene Brown. Something she brings up is the story I'm telling myself is. And the story. So the story that you're telling yourself is that today is going to be the worst day ever, as an example. And if I'm telling myself that, it's likely that that day, or I'm going to seek to confirm, which we call confirmation bias, is going to confirm each of these things. And so, if what I would say is, like, how can I change the narrative? What is the narrative that I want to tell myself today, that I want to wake up and be grateful for, as an example, or have gratitude for my day, or be inspired today? If I pick a feeling and I say, you know what, today I want to feel joy, and that might just be the feeling for the day, I'm going to go around and validate everything that brings me joy that day, whether it's the color of my plant that I have, whether it's the coffee that I'm drinking in the morning, or the road trip music that I heard. That's something that I'm going to seek. So it's like, what's the story that I want to tell myself today?
Hmm. So it's always about acknowledging what is wrong with us and then re-narrating ourselves that, okay, no, this is wrong, accept it, and then start giving affirmation to ourselves like, okay, no, I am good. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have these kind of feelings. So acknowledging most of the time is going to help.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I like to say, you can give yourself permission to dot dot dot. So give yourself permission to sit in the negativity, or sit in the feelings, and just acknowledge the feelings that are coming up with that narrative. So if that's the original story you told yourself, sit in it for a second and be like, do I like this? Is this what I want? Is this what I need for me right now? Do I have capacity for this? When we're in depressed brain, it's hard to get out of that. So, people might say that's, like, challenging to do, and I will 100% acknowledge that it is. However, to get unstuck and to get out of that depressed brain mindset, we have to think something differently. There's this kind of, balance or scaled, whether we do something differently. So we call it activation, or we motivate ourselves to do something differently, which is the thought
Right.
process. So
Mhm.
if we can't change the thought process by changing the narrative, then what we got to do is just get up and do it, whatever that thing is. So
Oh, yeah.
that's kind of how we find that what works for you, right? Because thought process might be more challenging for somebody. And say someone's like, I want to go to the gym today, or I want to just go for a walk today. It's like, I either get up and put on my walking shoes, or I have to motivate myself to be like, I'm going to feel great after I do this. I love walking. I love nature. And we have to motivate ourselves. So it's either or, finding that balance of what works specifically for you.
Yeah, action is easier. Definitely, I can say for
Yeah.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just easier because when you start thinking about things, it's like you're going in so much loop after loop that you're trying to convince all the words that is coming to you, and then it keeps coming, then you keep motivating. It keeps coming, you keep motivating, and you end up just being there in the room, same place. So definitely action is the best I can say from my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And like even just noticing how, when you said that for yourself, how your behavior changed, how that you were like smiling. And so just noticing how that even made you feel and acknowledging that to be like, I love actioning. And when I action, I feel this way. Your behavior just showed that to me that that
Right.
works for you.
Yeah. So you have worked with many indigenous communities as well and different communities. So that experience teaches that healing can be collective. Sometimes it's not only individual, but it's all together we heal as a community. So, what have these experiences taught you about how community can help and heal together? Do you have any of these
Mhm.
experiences?
I really appreciate this is something that I truly do value in my practice. Even just learning in school in particular, how community and how each culture uses their community in different forms,
Right.
and how that can be respected for different people.
Mhm.
So working with Indigenous population for 8 years really helped me to understand how their community is utilized differently, whether that's in feasts, in round dances, in the elders, in the stories that they share, um, in the sweats that they do, and all of those cultural components to really bring in that sense of safety, because it's generational, right? Like they've
Yeah.
learned this for generations. And so
Mhm.
bringing in that sense of safety component, and when a Caucasian white person can validate and honor that for somebody, it's that mutual respect. Like you understand me, you understand where I'm coming from, the piece that's so important in life. I think that's the biggest thought here, is that we all have communities, and mine, um, for me, was my family, it was my friends, it was some of my peers and colleagues who have gone through this process with me, of the EPPP in particular, or starting my business. And one thing that someone told me quite some time ago was, you really need to surround yourself with like-minded people. And that was so helpful for me, because as a business owner, when I was talking with people who had no clue about a business and didn't know how or what to
Right.
open a business, I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, I got to go network with business people, because otherwise because I needed that sense of community. I needed that support and that help. So it was really, really inspiring for me to work with different populations, and how different populations also experience psychology and psychological things differently. Some are more somatic, some are more mental, some are more outward. It's very different. So learning about how different cultures experience different things is also a very unique process, and it changes the way that I work with people. And I have to respect that.
Wow. So you have
Mhm.
seen how mental health support is not always same for everyone. So how can a therapist or a ordinary people do to make sure that they truly understand and respect someone's culture or identity or a background?
I would say like the biggest thing is to be open. I can say that from the beginning, I was a little bit more closed-minded at the beginning. That's probably when I first started school. And so in my perspective, it would to just be open and be curious and ask questions, not from a
Okay.
place of defensiveness, but a place of curiosity and seeking to understand.
What
Um,
they're
there,
thinking.
there will be, yeah, get them thinking, right?
Mm.
And like be like, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? So yeah, one way that I do something might not work for somebody else, even in the same culture, as an example. So we do have
Mm.
to be able to navigate. There's not a one way thing for everybody. And so it is to be open and be curious. Ask the questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you could redesign society's conversation about mental health, what is one word or idea you would remove, and what would you replace it with?
Um, Great question. I would say to advocate. Advocation like doesn't need to be this big rah rah picketing thing, but just to advocate for to listen, to actively listen, and stand up for your people to say, hey, what's going on with you? What's happening with you right now?
Mm.
It's not what's wrong with you. And that's kind of something that I read in a book a long time ago. It's not what's wrong with you. It's what has happened to you and what got you from point A to point Z. And everyone has a story. So to just listen and then to be able to advocate for that person, to be like, hey, I got you, I'm here for you, I can stand up for you.
Yeah, it's not them, it's the situation which got them to this position. So we can understand them not as a personality, but as the situation that happened to them. So listening would actually help. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So before we finish, what daily habits or small rituals help you stay grounded or connected to yourself?
Yeah, I do some mindfulness stuff. So I do some mindfulness practices. They're not long. I don't like the 1 hour mindfulness practices. I will do just a quick 3 to 5 minute mindfulness practice, which just really grounds me. It really recenters me. In my office space, I do have like a reclining chair. So when I kind of get here, I'll make my coffee. I kind of recline back my chair. I sit here and I kind of just close my eyes and I just really ground myself to like where I'm at in this present moment. I do have a lot of sunlight in my room, so I know the changing of the changing of the colors here in my office is the sun. So, but that's kind of lovely and it's very natural and normal. So just being able to have that sun, I'm just really grateful for that. So I take time to also notice the gratitude in my life and what I'm grateful for. I work out, so I do work out on a daily basis. I also play a lot of golf, so just kind of keeping those practices. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really at that point where I also do validate myself and acknowledge my affirmations in my life. So I do, you know, I am successful. What is successful today? Really acknowledging my day, what went well today, instead of what went wrong. Those types of things, those are kind of what I do in my daily life practice. I talk to a lot of friends. I'm close with my parents, so I do bring in my community as well into my circle. And I also have a dog and he's amazing. And
Wow.
going home to him every day and taking care of him is also is my self-care and how I take care of myself.
Wow. Wonderful. Yeah, dogs are lovely. With them, I think 90% of healing is already done. I don't know.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, pet therapy would be amazing. I kind of
Yeah.
sometimes wish I got into that.
Yeah. So, do you have any practical therapy or method to share with us today?
Yeah, I would actually love to do a calm place with you today if you're open to it. And
Yes.
it's just something that I don't know if you've ever heard of the butterfly hug before, but I'll just kind of do this grounding practice with you, and anyone can also use this. And then I'll just get you to share with me what's going on for you, and I'll kind of take note, and then I will teach you how to do this on your own. So I'm just going to
Okay.
get you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or you can leave them open and look down. So I want you to tell me about a place in your adult life that you felt most comfortable, calm, and secure. It might be a place in your home, in your imagination, or in nature. And when you have this place, let me know what you see.
It's mostly when I'm first thing in the morning, when I sit on my desk and um, think and write about my dreams and work on my current project, Magnetic Women Monday. So that's the part I really love and I enjoy.
Good. So as you're sitting at your desk, what do you hear?
So whenever I sit there, it's very quiet and it's very nice. The window is open and a lot of birds, sun rising. So yes, chirping, and most of the time a very quiet moment for me.
Good noticing. What do you smell when you're there sitting and working?
It's my room refreshment and the tea beside me. I smell the tea.
Good noticing. And when you're there, what do you feel?
I feel accomplished, in peace, very quiet and very fulfilled.
Good. And what are you noticing in your body as you sit?
My thoughts are usually that I have already achieved all this, so it's always happy thoughts.
Good. So as we're sitting at your desk, you're getting ready for the day. It's the early morning. You can see the sun and the sky. You're seeing all of your stuff in front of you that's accomplished. You can smell your tea. You can smell the breeze from the window being open. You can hear the birds chirping. You're just feeling very relaxed and peaceful, accomplished in this quietness of your office space. You're just noticing all of this calmness around you and everything that magnetic Mondays look like for you. I want you to notice those sensations that you feel in your body. And then I want you to open your eyes and I want you to just put your hands on your collarbone in this butterfly hug position. Amazing. And we're just going to tap lightly back and forth, alternating. Amazing. And we're just going to notice that you're in your office. You can smell the tea. You can hear the birds chirping. You're noticing that everything is so quiet around you. You're feeling accomplished and light. Noticing, you can take that big breath. Good. What word, phrase, symbol, or cue word do you want to call this calm place for yourself?
Peaceful.
Peaceful. So I want you to just tap about 8 times back and forth and say peaceful to yourself. Good. How are you feeling now?
Oh, wow. Can't explain. I'm actually feeling peaceful right now. And I was actually in that moment. Wow, thank you so much.
You're so
Felt
welcome.
so good. Felt
So we
so
call that calm place. So that's something that you can do on your own. Anything that's bilateral stimulation or tapping on your lap or anything that's kind of just noticing that that's bilateral stimulation. It's a component of EMDR that we use for calm place. So just creating that calm place for yourself. And then we call this butterfly hug, just kind of feeling like that nice little warm place and then going to that. And creating that cue word for yourself is what's really helpful here as well.
okay. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yes, you're so welcome.
So one last question. Do you have any message for our audience today?
I'm just so honored to be in the position that I'm in. And, I'm honored to sit with clients in their deepest, darkest, vulnerable moments. And so I just want you to know from a therapist perspective, because some people are so scared to go talk to somebody, or they're like, this person's going to judge me, or this person's going to criticize or look down. I want you to know that it's so not true. therapists are there to honor you, to respect you, to validate you, to provide empathy, to provide that safe space. And I just want you to know that they're so honored. It's we put our clients at the highest standard, being like, you deserve to be here. So you deserve to get help. You deserve to be heard and to be listened to. So I hope that that would be my one message for people, is just to seek help where you know that you might need it in your life, because you do know, you know somewhere in there is telling you that I need some help. And so to seek that help and that opportunity from someone who's so willing to give you all of themselves and all of their knowledge, and to help you get past and recover through this journey.
Wow, Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your heart. So it was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Akita. I really appreciate this. I love what you're doing for people, and bringing forward this to the truth of your listeners. And I'm really appreciative of being here today. So thank you as well.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Sometimes healing doesn't look like peace, it looks like honesty. It's crying when you thought you would move on. It's forgiving yourself for what you didn't know back then. And today, with Vanessa, we didn't just talk about psychology, we talked about being human, about learning the language of your mind so you can finally make peace with your heart. If this conversation made you pause, even for a moment, share it with someone who is still carrying this silent pain. Because when one person heals, it gives other permission to do the same. I am Ankita Pandey, and this is Magnetic Women Monday. Until next time, stay real, stay magnetic.